Hey, good morning. It's Dr. Bill Williams on the Influencers Podcast. Here we are on a Friday, right before the weekend starts. And this is a very appropriate topic today. We're going to be talking with Melanie Bell, founder of Leaders Who Fiction. Yes, read fiction, books, that is. So why is that good? Well, we're heading into the weekend. We prop our feet up and start reading, take a load off, right? Melanie, come on in and welcome to the Influencers Podcast.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here. And I was so intrigued by the name of your business, your group, your study club, your online book club. Tell us all about Leaders Who Fiction and how'd you get started with that?
Sure. So we are an online book club, for lack of a better word, community that we're building of people who want to work on building their leadership skills and like reading fiction and basically need an excuse to do that. I'm sure a lot of people can identify with maybe they were used to enjoy reading fiction as they grew up, and then as their professional careers took off, then we feel a lot of pressure to read business books and strategy books and that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden a year will go by and we haven't read anything. And so this group is really meant to give people an excuse to read a novel. So we meet once a month and talk about our book pick for an hour, and we do that every month.
Sounds like a winner to me. I've been an avid reader all my life, and I went through Isaac Asimov in the science fiction. I went through John Grisham with the lawyer stories, and I went through some of the secret agent guys with Robert Ludlum. Mm-hmm. And there's always a lesson to learn, and it's interesting that you can pull out the lessons and bring fiction to life and make it useful.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, the great thing about fiction to me is that there's so much that a writer is really exploring that's kind of a gray area. So the characters aren't only good or bad, they've got both qualities, and situations aren't very clear cut. And so for me, it's like that's so much more realistic for real life, that there's a lot that we can take away from that.
Well, right now, Jack Reacher is the big one, and everybody's going, oh, to have a man like that in my life to save me from all the foils and tribulations. What kind of books do you guys read? What do you take on as a book club?
So I try to have it be a mix of different genres, books published in different years. So this month, our meeting that we have at the end of January is going to be a science fiction book called Project Hail Mary by a writer called Andy Weir. But we read historical fiction, we've read thrillers, we've read, so I try to keep it interesting because everyone's got their favorite genres that they read. But to me, one of the best things about a book club is that you end up reading stuff that you wouldn't have read otherwise.
Yeah, it's kind of recommended by somebody else. And so you go, oh, if I have to, I will. But then you end up liking it.
Yes, exactly. And it's always so fun and surprising when that happens. And I love hearing about, when our members read it and they're like, I never would have picked this book up, but I really enjoyed it. And I'm so glad I read it. And I think those are some of my favorite moments.
Yeah, I enjoy finding a new author that I get into, and I go for recommendations. That's what I do. I listen to people and I go, what's good about that book or that author? And then I make a mistake sometimes. I buy every book the author wrote.
Yep.
Sometimes I will buy the number 1 through 13.
Mm-hmm.
And I get into it, and I usually finish the entire series before I start another series.
That's a great way to do it. I love reading through that author. Reading through an author's work is great. Yeah. It's fun too if you read them in order, because then it's like you get to see how that writer's skills have developed. And I think you can tell it's like where they started and, how they're writing currently. You can see their improvement, which is neat.
Yeah. I can remember I asked a couple of my patients about books because I heard when I interviewed them as a dentist, I talked to people about what they do in their life, and several authors kind of showed up, and I bought all their books. And I didn't have one that I didn't enjoy. And Leslie Tentler was one that has written about 5 or 6 books, and she won some awards. And I was real proud just to know her, to be her dentist.
Yeah.
And, it's always fun. I know one guy wrote one book, and it was so good, but he only wrote one book.
Yep.
And it's like, why didn't you write more?
More.
So I wrote 2 books that were international bestsellers myself, but they were more business management. And
Yep.
I tended to want to focus on my career when I was writing books. But the secret I always had was I want to write fiction, but I never put my pen to paper and actually did it. So maybe when I grow up, I'll do that.
There you go. That's a good goal. I like it.
Yeah. So let's get into Leaders Who Fiction, and how do you discuss somebody coming into that group? What is the first of all, what's the motivation for you to start the group?
So what happened was the story I was telling earlier was very much mine, where I used to read a lot, and then as I started working, I found that I had less and less time that I was willing to put into read. My background's in digital marketing, and so it's like the last thing I wanted to do after spending a day in front of the computer was have my eyes have to do some additional lifting there. And it got to the point where I was reading maybe a book in a year, and as I was talking to some of my clients, there are so many people that had that exact same story, and I ended up starting to read more, and which my eyes got used to it. So that whole problem was just temporary. And my clients kept saying to me, and they're like, oh gosh, I miss reading. I really wish I was reading more. And so it just occurred to me that there needed to be the same purpose and excuse there. And so to me, that motivation of giving people an activity that they enjoy doing again. I think that was kind of one of the interesting things that happened through the pandemic, was that, our whole lives became more visible to the people that we work with, whether that was, having kids or pets in the house that needed attention or all of that kind of stuff. And so to me, it's been really exciting to give people this excuse and watch them enjoy a hobby again that, was really waylaid for a while.
Does Leaders Who Fiction have any particular motto or saying that you like to use?
So I've been working on stuff like core values and mission statements and that kind of stuff. But in terms of a motto, the tagline that I frequently use is, "This is your permission slip to read fiction again." That's really the one that we've gone back to over and over. Because I think so many times people would feel guilty when they pick up a novel and instead feel like they should be reading the latest business book or strategy book. And so that was where I was trying to kind of hone in on that notion.
Absolutely. As a dentist, I always read dental books for the first 5 or 10 years of my life.
Right.
In dentistry. When I first got in practice, I wanted to learn more. So all the books I read were very uniquely dentistry. And then I got into Robert Ludlum early, as I started looking for outside activities. Like you said, you got to have a refreshment time, not just work. And I remember traveling with the Academy of General Dentistry on an international dental exchange program in Russia, in Moscow. And I was walking down Dravinsky Square behind the Iron Curtain before the fall of the curtain.
Right.
And I was right there where Robert Ludlum was talking about in his book as I was reading that book.
Yeah.
It's like you put yourself right where the fiction is, and it's real. It's not just fiction anymore.
Yeah, definitely. That's so cool. I love that feeling. I like when I travel, I try to read books that take place, wherever it is that I'm going. And it just gives you such a different texture of it when you do that. So,
yeah. So tell us some of the success secrets. You dig into a novel.
Yeah. Oh, I think you froze. Oh, now you're back. Sorry, you froze on me.
It's kind of cold out, we do freeze a lot.
Yeah. So in terms of specifically success when it comes to reading fiction, and how do we take leadership lessons away from reading fiction, to me, one of the key things as you read is figuring out who has the power in each scene. And I think tuning into those power dynamics can be a really powerful way that someone can take away leadership lessons from the book. I think so. That's one. One is just purposefully reading with a leadership lens. So I am, like, in my free time, I do creative writing. And I think one thing that I noticed, and this was one of the things that I had when I was thinking about leadership fiction and coming up with that idea, worked for me, was you can read something 20 different, the same piece of literature 20 different ways. And depending on what your objective is, you'll get something out of it. And so when I read as a writer, I take away different lessons than when I'm reading just for the fun of it. And that's different than when I'm reading for, okay, what are the leadership lessons that I can take out of this? And so I think being very intentional about why you're reading will really shape that. And then my last tip is just making a habit of it, and being consistent with that habit. And I think that's one of the powerful things about our group, because we're meeting every month. It's easy, like anything else that is good for us that we don't want to do, like going to the gym. It's easy, like, yeah, I'll get to that. And it really is about habitually reading and setting aside that time to do it. And like I said, I think it's I'm really tired at the end of the workday. But if you're reading regularly, then it starts to be a refreshing activity, and it gives you energy and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I really like the emphasis on each of those points. The fact that you can read with a different purpose and extract something different, but by your actual mindset.
Yeah.
That's a novel point that I hadn't thought about. I typically read for enjoyment, but I don't read fiction for elucidating leadership. I mean, that is another whole parameter of how do you read for gaining knowledge in fiction. I never thought about that. So this is novel for me, and I'm sure the audience is going, aha.
Yeah.
Tell us why somebody should join a group. Is this free or is this a membership?
For now, it's free. At some point down the road, then it might convert into something else, but for now it's just free. And why someone should do it, I think, again, it's if people need the excuse to read, if you want to read maybe books that you wouldn't necessarily just pick up on your own. So the types of books that we're reading, I think, are really interesting. And then to have the conversations that we have, I mean, the group is very welcoming, but it's always so interesting to hear different people's perspectives on what they took away from a book or what they enjoyed or didn't like. So it's a really interesting group of people that we're putting together. This type of concept attracts an interesting person to it.
I can see that this would turn into quite a fun time for the participants, but also the coach. I can see you being a book reading coach. I could see you being a leadership coach using the book format.
Mm-hmm.
And if you become an income center, you could have different genres of books and have different coaching programs. So many variables that you could just grow this into. And
yeah,
I think you're really onto something.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, one of the interesting things to me that I've read about is where internal teams at companies will read the same book. And it's a great team building exercise, because if there's certain conflicts that people have within the team, when you aren't addressing it as you're doing this or you're not doing that, but you can talk about it through the context of a book, it takes away some of that people's defensiveness and talking about issues. And so I think there are a lot of really interesting avenues of stuff where I think this applies to people's
psychotherapy or group therapy through the book. Rather, take a book. I would think what would be a very good technique would be to get the classics and take Great Expectations or a Catcher in the Rye, all the ones that were the Nobel or Pulitzer Prize winning books.
Yeah.
You actually, not all of them are so good anymore, but the real classics, boy, you could go to town on that with all the lessons in those.
Definitely. Definitely.
Who would be an ideal person to join?
So we have a couple of different types of people that that are really good for this club. So we do have a host of entrepreneurs that, they're finding themselves in leadership positions that might be a first time for them. Not that they haven't had leadership positions before, but it's different when it's your own company. So we've got some people who are mid-career. A lot of times when people are going through career changes, so that first leadership position, or maybe it's their first time stepping into a C-level role. And then I've got some people who are later on in their careers and, they're thinking about stuff like legacy. And I think they just are looking at their career in a very different way. And so then that attracts them to this kind of group as well.
So you're going out
to read.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going out to find these people, what do you do to bring them in, and how many is in a group?
Right. So we're a fairly small group now because it's still growing and I'm still getting the word out there. And so right now we're about 12 to 15 people. And as we grow, then right now we've got one meeting a month. So it's on the last Wednesday every month. But as we grow, I think I'd like to keep the groups at about 15 to 20 people max, just so that conversation stays pretty relevant and people get airtime during the conversation. So there'll be more meetings that we offer as we grow. And so a lot of it is referral right now. So people who it's like, oh, I've heard this person who I work with, I know they're really into reading. This would be up their alley. And so a lot of it right now has just been word of mouth and referral.
Now, if you got 20 people, you've got lookers and lurkers, and you got participants, and then you've got people who try to monopolize. What's your breakout of that?
Actually, we don't have that many people who want to monopolize. So the group that we have right now, I mean, there are some people who are quieter and, are much more thoughtful with their conversation, but part of that comes down to the conversation facilitation of that and making sure that those people get a chance to talk, and hopefully ways that don't make them feel uncomfortable. But everyone, to the most part, has been very respectful of making sure, to not dominate too much in the conversation. So
a good facilitator is a skill.
Yes, it is.
It is a skill.
Yeah.
I don't guess you have.
We're going to try something new this year where we've got people who will co-host, or, maybe they'll try and run a meeting, because that has I've been the one who's been doing that. So it'll be interesting to see how the dynamic changes with people who are guests doing that.
You just brought up a thought that I had. I was in a book discussion group once. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is an excellent book to have a business group gather around and discuss, right? But what I found was it got started, but it never finished.
Yeah.
And how do you maintain the group continuity to go from start to finish on a book?
So, well, we read one book a month, and then we have 1 hour to discuss that book. So we're not breaking it up into smaller segments and then meeting to talk about that. And we actually have a lot of people who will come to most meetings, maybe not all of them, because people, life gets in the way of that. But we really have had a good retention rate with people coming back for meetings. And I think some of that is just the quality of the conversation, and the people who are part of that group. The other thing that I'm working on that will make this a little bit different this year, that I'm going to launch this later this month, is having an online community platform. And so people who can't make the meetings will be able to go in and have asynchronous communication about a book. So if someone can't make a meeting, they can still talk about it. So that was something that some of our members had requested when they've got you know.
Do you actually record your sessions and have them as part of the ongoing availability?
That's something new that I'm going to start doing this month, actually.
Excellent.
So, yes.
Is there
So,
any competition for anybody else doing this kind of thing? Have you heard? Is it new?
so it's, as far as I can tell, it's new. The competition that I see are people whose companies have internal book clubs, and so they're meeting within a company. And this is a little bit different because, and what I like about this is that you're not only meeting with people at your company, so you're getting some networking in at the same time. And then I know I've seen a couple of groups that have more of a consulting model to it. So they are coming in to do work with a team and facilitate that conversation again with more of an internal focus.
Right.
I mean, if I wanted to go broad, it could be like, well, every book club is competition, but then they don't have the specific leadership lens and focus. So
yeah, I can see a lot of people doing this as a network to build their business technique. I mean, it's very well designed type of system to get people to know you, which then they will hire you.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that would lead into a question about your business, just to close the loop, strategic piece, your marketing business. Does this lead into some offer of services and products that you can use to invite people to use your service?
Yeah, so I keep them pretty separate. I mean, I have clients that have decided to participate in Leaders Who Fiction, but so it's worked more that way around. So with strategic piece, we a lot of what we're doing is fractional marketing executive work, so fractional CMO or head of marketing. And so we tend to work with people who are at VP level or C level, that's who day to day we interact with. And so they tend to be more interested in Leaders Who Fiction as opposed to Leaders Who Fiction going into strategic piece for marketing services.
I gotcha. Yeah, I kind of wore two hats for many years, a dentist over here and an instructor of dentist over there. And they didn't always go together because my two audiences were totally different, patients over here, dentist over here. But now that I'm retired as a dentist, I'm working in the IT business and introducing people to IT products. It's like a lot of what I do, I can translate how to teach people from my old past and how to relate to people from my dental past. And it's a good combination. So, I call it my hobby. My IT business is my hobby.
Yeah.
Now, and it's like what you're doing is like a hobby that has benefits.
Yeah. It's definitely right now a passion project.
Tell me about your platforms. How do you go out and approach the people? What do you put your broadcast and connections on? What platforms out there?
So the one, and I'm shifting this a little bit, I've used my personal LinkedIn profile because most of the time individuals get more visibility than company pages, but it's gotten to the point where I want to have something a bit more official for this. So I'm switching over and using more of a company page on LinkedIn. And then some Instagram. I need to be a bit more consistent with Instagram. That's the other main platform that we use. And then the other way that I've gotten the word out is really in-person events. So it's not stuff that scale, but it's at this stage, it's, when you're early, it doesn't always have to scale. I think it's like, go out and test your message and test the concept and test the idea and see what resonates. And so that's really more of where we've been operating the last couple of years and shifting now into, okay, so how do we scale this? How do we reach a broader audience?
Are you using video conferencing or just audio? What are you doing?
So we meet on Zoom. That's how our meetings happen. And then, and like I said, then we'll be introducing a platform that'll be a website where people will be able to post separately. But right now, everything's been over Zoom.
Yeah, tell me about the features that you most value when you go on Zoom. What are you using as the main features?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic. I mean, we're using audio visual. So Most people will have webcams on, but we haven't really even needed breakout rooms at this point, just because the group is a good size for conversation. I like that it makes it easy. So I have to use Teams for some of my clients, but I think Zoom works really, really well when you have people coming from different organizations all into one group. And I like that I can require registration for it so that I know who to expect, who's going to be showing up that day. And now with introducing this, recording the Zoom calls, and I'm going to be taking notes, is I'm going to also use some of their AI tools and integrations so that turning the conversation into a deliverable or something that people can print out will make that an easier process for me.
What features you would say are missing that you would like to add in to such a platform as the one that you video broadcast over?
That's a good question. I still wish it was a little bit easier for people to sign up and join. I mean, I feel like everyone's always got their technical issue, every time there's somebody that has a problem dialing in. And I do think that it would be great to have a more seamless integration between the community, the online platform that I'm going to have, and then to actually have these meetings, so that I feel like right now it's going to be sending people to Zoom and separately to a community, and it'd be really nice for them to be together.
Yeah. How about foreign language? Would you like to have foreign language translation so you could hear an English speaker in Russian or Chinese?
That would be really interesting. Right now, everyone's been English speaker, but yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome as we grow to have that functionality and to open that up. That'd be really interesting.
What would make being on a Leaders Who Fiction have a 5-star experience?
Sure. So to me, it's making sure that when somebody signs up for the first time, that they feel really welcome in the group. I think one of the things that I've heard from people who've participated is they were nervous coming in that the conversation would be at some like elite level of discussing literature. And it's not like that. It's a good conversation, but this isn't a bunch of English professors sitting around and having this conversation about a book. So I want to make sure that people feel really welcome. I want to make sure that people feel like they have had the opportunity to speak, but then they've also gotten the opportunity to hear what other people have to say. Again, almost from the perspective of, who do you want to have conversations outside of this group with? And so, and I think making sure that we've got enough people in the meeting to keep it interesting when it's, as you early days might have only a handful of people, and it was a good conversation, but it's a much richer conversation as the group has grown.
How much do you spend early, especially on introducing one another to the group?
Try to keep it brief. But if we have somebody new on the call, we will go around and just do quick introductions, but I try to keep that as short as possible, just so that we've got more time to talk about the book. And the way I look at it is that book conversation is also an opportunity to get to know each other. And that's a really interesting way to get to know each other beyond the, okay, so what do you do question.
You probably tell some of them to limit it to 2 minutes.
Most people have been very respectful of it. And I think most of the time they're pretty eager to talk about the book. So it's a good incentive to keep it brief.
That's pretty impressive. That's good. That's good leadership on your part.
Yeah.
How do you convert people to be brand ambassadors to spread the word of what you're doing?
Like I said, I think the most important thing is that everyone has a good experience in the meeting. So they feel welcome. They feel like they've been invited to participate in that conversation. They've been heard and respected. And then really after that, I try to make sure that I'm getting feedback from people pretty regularly. So a lot of the new initiatives that I have coming out this year are really what people have asked for. And and then putting content out where they are able to share it, I think, is the other, making it easy for them to be a brand ambassador.
Super. What about your self now? What are you grateful for today, Melanie?
Oh, well, I'm really grateful for the support that I've had in building this. That's been huge. And I'm really grateful that I have the ability to take on something that isn't currently making any money. I think that I feel very lucky that I can do that.
There you go.
Yeah.
I chose a long time ago to direct my hobbies toward things that might make money. Didn't
Yeah.
have to make money, but at least they had potential.
Yeah.
So, it took me away from golfing. I never make money golfing. I'm so bad. But I enjoy teaching, and I enjoy doing things that expose people to new things. That's
Yes.
my joy.
Yeah.
I guess that's the definition of an evangelist.
Yes. Yeah.
I always want people to be inspired by what's new and different and innovative. This is
Yeah.
innovation that you're discussing today. I really do enjoy our conversation. Tell us how you start every day.
So, mine is getting up and getting myself dressed and feeding myself. I do start every day by journaling, 3 pages, stream of consciousness. To me, that I've been doing that for the last 6 or 7 years, and it's been a real game changer for me doing that. And then I get into, okay, what do I have coming up today, and getting into it.
Is there a
But
book coming out of your journaling? You're going to make a foray into literature?
we'll see. I would love to. I'll keep working on it.
What do you do when you get challenged?
So definitely we'll journal about it. I have a great business coach who I bounce ideas off of. My business partner for Strategic Peace is also my husband. So I've got a really interesting support network there with him. But I think I try to talk things through, get perspective on it, write about it, and just keep in mind that it's like the only way to get to the end of something is through it. And so I try to not avoid the challenge and just kind of tackle it head on as best I can, one thing at a time.
Just look at it as an everyday occurrence and just deal with it, right?
Yeah.
What is the long-term goal for leaders who fiction?
So my long-term goal is to build this up so that we've got hundreds of people who are participating in this. I would love for it to be from all over the world. I think that it will be interesting to see how to make that best happen. So is that by having specific genres that people focus on? So, I'm really a sci-fi reader and I'm going to go read all, join the sci-fi groups, or maybe it's just purely by meeting time. But my goal is to really grow this, because the people who've participated in it so far have been so positive about it and really enjoy it. So I'd love to just see that really keep growing.
Do you see yourself teaching others your technique and kind of having a coaching network?
I think that would be a really interesting path to go down. So yes. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about your young self, 20 years old, wondering what to do in life. What would you give the advice to that little 20-year-old wandering around going, what's next?
My advice would be patient and stay curious. I think I felt like I had to have it all figured out so early, and I really mean all of it figured out. And it was like, to me, this was something that I figured out as an entrepreneur, was I don't have to have it all figured out. What I need to have is some direction, and I need to know what the next right thing is. And once I took this pressure off of myself, I don't have to know where everything's going to be 5, 10, 20 years. I can have an idea and I can dream about that, and that's great. But figure out the next right move. That was really powerful. That was a real game changer for me. And then I felt like it was how fast can I move? So how fast can I climb up the ladder? How fast can I get into a leadership position? How fast can I? And it was like, I think in some ways would have really benefited from slowing down and learning, really soaking in some basic professional stuff that, later caught up, and I had to relearn it then. But there's no rush. Your career can be a long time.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be a sprint to the finish line.
Well, it's like taking a lesson out of Huckleberry Finn.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get ahead in life, you just help other people, and then you'll find the result.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a living mentor right now?
So I would say the person who was most impactful to me as a former boss that I had, she is still alive, so she is a living mentor. But it's not somebody who I am in regular talks. I haven't really kept in touch beyond social media with her. So we're connected on LinkedIn. I know what she's still up to. But my one of my early bosses, she was CEO of the company, founder and CEO of the company, and she really took me under her wing and gave me a lot of coaching when I needed it. And that has really been an impactful change in my career life.
Is that kind of what you want to turn around and pass on to the next generation or next group of folks? And that's kind of your why?
Yeah. I think whatever we can do, I felt like early career was a pretty tumultuous time for me. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And I think whatever we can do to help make it easier, or to at least help people understand what's normal, like this is to be expected. You're not doing something wrong if you're feeling this way or you're encountering these challenges. That's just part of it. Whatever we can do to make that easier is really strong.
So, Miss Melanie Bell, if you look back at your life and say, when it's all said and done, what do you want to be remembered for?
Well, I hope that people will remember me for generosity and for creativity. I think those two things are really speak a lot to what I'm trying to do.
Excellent. Do you have a connection point, ways we could reach you, find out more about Strategic Peace and Leaders Who Fiction?
Sure. So with Leaders Who Fiction, we have a website, which is leaderswhofiction.com. It's also, we do have, like now we have an official company page on LinkedIn. So you can just type that in the search bar and we should come up. And if you want to find me too, it's Melanie A. Bell on LinkedIn is a really good way to reach me.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope people will take advantage of knowing more about Leaders Who Fiction.
That'd be great.
What can you say about your experience on the Influence of the Podcast today?
This has been a great conversation. I appreciate that you've chimed in with your own fictional, experiences as well, from reading and traveling and that kind of stuff. It's been great.
Yeah, I enjoy talking about reading and books, and some of my most viewed videos that I've ever done, and I've done some interesting techniques for marketing and just general chat. Twice I did a 100-day challenge where I got a live YouTube or live Facebook video every day for 100 straight days.
Wow, that's impressive.
The most visited, promoted video was when I talked about my books and what I had been reading.
Yeah.
And I did a mini book review on all my books. I had a stack of them, and I said, this is what happened in this one. This is what happened in this one. And I went on for about 30, 40 minutes with my entire stack of books. And that got more views, thousands and thousands of views.
Interesting.
You might tell people if they want to promote something in their life that's fun, just do a book review.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like it. But it's been good. And the questions that you've asked have been different than I typically get asked, by other people. So it's been good, thought-provoking.
I'm happy to be a different. I like the differentiation types of techniques. And
Yes.
my last podcast before this one last week actually was somebody who's into differentiation. I'll tell you, his name is Jesse Warbileski, and himself marketing for supervillains. And he talks about differentiation. Catch that podcast if you can. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be talking about where you can see all the rest of our podcast later. But before we get to that, I want to give you the final word to talk to our audience. I'm going to close my window and let you speak directly.
All right. So final word, a lot of pressure. I feel like I've covered a lot of ground on this, but I think the main thing is just try and find something that you enjoy doing and do it regularly. And if that's reading, then fantastic. If it's not reading, then don't worry about it. Don't pick up a book. Go find something you enjoy. Go do the golf. Go teach. Go do something else that you enjoy.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. Excellent final word. Excellent podcast today. I found it most interesting. I hope our audience will follow along with me and then catch up with you as you go along. Speaking of catching up, if you want to see the rest of our podcast, you can go to the QR code I've got in the corner up here, and it goes to my digital business card on Ovu. And that digital business card basically has all the podcasts plus 2 or 3 more things. It has our AI technology. I have a lot of software programs that I promote, and one of them is a OTrim, which made my QR code shortener. It made my QR code and my URL shortener customized. So you can actually use this for free. We give this away for free, Melanie. Anybody that's in any place can use it. All you have to do is download it and start using it. It'll make a QR code out of a long one. It'll make it a custom out of a long one. So it's very useful. But that's not the main thing. Our flagship is OConnect. I told you about video conferencing, and I told you about something very special, the ability to speak in different languages.
Yes.
Well, this is already under development and will be rolled out to the public very soon, where you can actually speak in English and be heard simultaneously in Russian, English, Chinese, French, Mandarin, whatever it is that's out there that we have, you can do that. And people can converse back and forth, and it's seamless. So look forward to seeing that, and we will lead the world in video conferencing based on not just that, but other features and benefits within OConnect.
Nice.
AI is going to be all over it. AI is going to do a lot of things for you.
Yeah.
And as a marketer, we've got OTracker, which is like Google Analytics, but better. Easier, cheaper. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah.
Hey, we're connecting with all kinds of interesting people, like Supercar Magulist in Dubai. We're connecting with people who are building charity programs. So we have one called Oh Bless that we will be giving away, a marketing program for charities to help build their awareness and help donations come in and help fund them. So this is our gift to the world, Oh Bless. So a lot of things coming out. And so anything that you would like to find out about, just go to Influencers Podcast on drbillwilliams.tv. You'll find links to everything that I mentioned. So Melanie, thanks for being on the Influencers Podcast. You're excellent, informative, and a joy. So
Thank you.
I hope everybody will take advantage of being connected to you.
That'd be great. And thank you so much for having me. It's been, like I said, a really good conversation.
Yeah, we'll have to do a book together one day.
There you go.
This has been Dr. Bill Williams with Melanie Bell on the Influencers Podcast. Have a good weekend, everybody.